will this matter?
Yeah.
Will this matter next week, next month, next year?
Yeah.
You know, what would my 80-year-old self be advising me? Well, somebody said, try yoga. So, you know, went to the yoga class, came out feeling worse.
Don't wait for something tragic to happen to make you realise that. It's like, you know, seize the moment now and, you know, make sure you're seeing those people you love more often than ever, because what is more important than life, than that connection?
So what do you think about that? What about kind of people taking it easy on themselves, being a bit easier on themselves, actually, and saying, do I expect more of myself than I do of anybody else?
Yeah.
And can I actually sustain this?
Yeah.
You know, what do you think about that kind of thing?
Yeah, what you've said is so true. And I think everyone goes through that at different points of their lives, and some people stay in that their whole lives. And I think, I think it's so important that we find time and space for ourselves. And for me, that could be cooking a meal. It's finding something that nourishes you, and it might not be food. It might be that you used to love painting as a child, and so, you know, maybe it's only one Sunday evening a week that you sit down and that's your 2 hours to do that. I think it's so important because it lets your mind rest. It lets all that stress go out of you, and it just gives you time for yourself and just to reset. I think it's so important because I think when we're kind of up here and, you know, everything's going on and we're like living in the fight and flight mode, our bodies, it's almost unhealthy for our bodies as eating unhealthy food. You know, it's all adding that load to your body. And if we don't take time out of our busy days and out of our lives to kind of really just let ourselves have that time, then we're going to make ourselves poorly. We're then going to probably not be able to look after the people who we want to as well as we want to be able to. And then everything is spiraling again, that, you know, we're putting more pressure on ourselves. We feel more stress. We're, you know, not getting to where we want to be. And so I think it's all about trying to, you know, add those little things into your life just slowly that can make a real difference. Food and other things that we can really then rely on as our time, as you know, our things that are going to nourish us and make our soul happy, that we're just taking that space for ourselves. Yeah, I think it's so important to try and find that. But first of all, you've got to recognize that you need that. And if you don't take that first step of taking some time, you're never going to actually learn to stop and actually just reflect on what's going on and why your life just seems a bit chaotic and out of control. Yeah.
We were talking earlier about connecting with others. I think what you're talking about there is connecting with ourselves, actually. To give that space where we can get to know ourselves, which we don't really take the time to do that because we've got 101 things to do.
Yeah.
And when we start to ask the question of, well, what might be important to me? What feels really relaxing? What recharges my batteries? You know, not doing stuff in a prescriptive way that, well, somebody said, try yoga. So, you know, went to the yoga class, came out feeling worse because I was looking at the person next to me. And this isn't a true story for me. This is a story that I heard another lady telling, that she'd spent the whole time looking at the person next to her who had this perfect yoga outfit on, you know, the perfect body. And she was there sort of thinking, well, this is this is, you know, who the hell wants to do this?
Yeah, yeah.
Because she wasn't fully present with that moment, really. So I think that's what we're talking about, is being fully present with whatever we're doing. and finding what works for us. Yoga wasn't perhaps her thing.
Yeah.
And so you were saying earlier, we get all these messages of we should be doing this and we should be doing that. And like I said earlier, the thing that we should be doing, I think, is being easier on ourselves and saying, hang on a minute, will this matter?
Yeah.
Will this matter next week, next month, next year?
Yeah.
You know, what would my 80-year-old self be advising me? I like that one.
Yeah.
You know, what really matters
Yeah.
when we're worrying about whatever it is, you know, that most of the time we have no control over. I love Mel Robbins when her new book, Let Them.
Yes,
That's a great
too.
concept.
Yes.
You know, she's really hit the nail on the head with all that kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is really what she's saying is to tune into ourselves and find out what we're about, what we feel is the right thing.
And why let yourself get annoyed by somebody else? I mean, me and my mum are very similar. And I mean, who knows if my dad will listen to this, but it'll be a good test to see if he does. But we both have listened to a podcast with her on and learned about the let them theory. And we often say to each other, you know, let him. If he does something that we're like, why have you done that, Dad? It's like, actually, if he wants to do that, that's fine. It doesn't actually really affect us. Like, that's fine. So, and I think it's a good way to go forward with your life, that don't let yourself get wound up by other people and, you know, almost absorb their stress into your own. It's like, yeah, is it going to matter in 1 hour, let alone, you know, 2 years' time? And I think also what you were saying about when you're 80 and you look back on your life, it's like, if you could picture your life and think, you know, what do I want to remember? Is it that you worked all the time? You know, is that what you want to remember? I think we take life for granted, and I think me and my friends learned this last year. Sadly, one of our friends passed away, and I think it makes you realize life can be really short, and it's all right thinking, I'm going to work and work and work, I'm going to earn all this money, and then, you know, I'm going to have this great retirement, and, you know, or maybe I'll go on this one amazing holiday once a year and all of that. But actually, it's like, when you look back on your life, you know, if you make it to after retirement age, it's like, what are you going to remember from that? You know, don't you want to remember all those lovely little things about spending time with your family and, you know, maybe having that beautiful garden that you always dreamed of? Or, you know, I'm not saying that if somebody's dream is to have this amazing career, then great. You know, if that's what they want to do, go out and do it. But it is worth just taking that step back and thinking in your life, like, what is it that you're actually looking for? What is it that's actually making you happy? And if, say, I don't know, going on a lovely walk in the countryside is what makes you happy, well, then how often are you doing that? Is it that it's, you know, twice a year when you go on holiday? And if so, how can you actually build that more into your life? Like, what are those 3 things that make you really happy? And are you actually doing them? And how could you do them more to make your life more fulfilled? I think it doesn't have to be complicated and, you know, big things. It's like, what are those little things that make you happy, and how can we do that more?
Being more intentional, I guess, setting out goals almost, of what's important and what's gonna feed you, what's gonna nourish you, what, like you say, what you're gonna look back on. So you were saying that, you know, that experience of your friend passing away, that made you view life in a different way. What else did you learn from that, do you think? How did that impact, or how does it impact you now in the way that you live your life?
I think Tom was such a huge character in all our lives. He was that person that, you know, when you saw him, he was going to bring the energy, he was going to bring the fun, he was always funny, and he didn't take himself too seriously. And I think we can all learn so much from that. You know, he lived life to the full. You know, even though when he had a cancer diagnosis, he still went off traveling. They did like some amazing things, and I just think he was really living his life and doing what he loved, and, you know, making sure they got out on those dog walks and going to the pub and all those things he loved in his life. And, nobody knew that what was going to happen happened. So it wasn't like he was thinking, oh, the end is coming, and so that's why I need to do that. It was just that he was living for the moment and living for every day and not taking himself too seriously. And I think, we all now think about that. And also it's made us not just get together once at Christmas. It's our friends from school. It's, we now make the effort to see each other more. And you kind of want to say to people, don't wait for something tragic to happen to make you realize that. It's like, seize the moment now, and, make sure you're seeing those people you love more often than ever, because what is more important than life, than that connection? I think it's, it comes back down to that, isn't it? It's just, yeah. So I think, yeah, it's taught us to connect more, and yeah, not take life too seriously and live for the moment and for the everyday, which I think is, yeah, out of a very sad situation is, you have to think of ways that you can go forward and think of positive things. So I think that's what we've all learned from it.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, that sounds really life, very impactful, actually, where you have that kind of experience. What stands out for you in terms of somebody that you've witnessed go through a health journey from eating more whole foods and they felt the benefits?
I think I sometimes do cooking demonstrations, and so people can come on them, and I do a demonstration for about a couple of hours and might demonstrate, 8 to 10 recipes, and then at the end they all sit down and eat the recipe, eat what I've cooked, and then they get a little booklet with the recipes in. And this lady came on one, and I think it was a bit of a treat that she'd come, and to come on your own to something, it can be quite intimidating. And so she said she'd really enjoyed it and really enjoyed the food. And then afterwards she sent me this massive email about how it had really changed her life. It had given her this renewed energy just to try things, and just by being shown a few simple recipes. And it was really simple things like, I'd got a food processor and just quickly put your veg in there, chop it up in there. Some things like that. It had just given her this new lease of life, and she just wanted to get home and get cooking. And she's come to a few of my things since, and each time she comes, she says it's made such a big impact that I don't know if it's, well, it probably has changed her health, because it's, she's introducing more variety into her diet, and things she had in the garden before, she kind of never even thought to cook in a way that wasn't just, steaming it. And she's now cooking it all sorts of ways. And I think to hear that I've actually impacted on somebody in that way is so lovely. And it's so, it makes me want to, do more and to hopefully influence other people. I think that's definitely one thing.
So through your journey, what are the personal experiences that you've experienced through your relationship with food, I guess, and how it's impacted certain elements of your life?
I think one example would be more recently, I did a detox where I just wanted to just try and reset my eating a bit. So I knew it was just going to be for a short period, and I cut out lots of refined carbohydrates like bread and pasta and things like that, and then also caffeine and alcohol. Not that I have much of those, but it was just kind of going back to the basics and really just focusing on eating whole foods and foods cooked from scratch. And so I did that for 10 days, and I have to say the first few days I could definitely tell that I wasn't having any caffeine. Not that I drank too much in the first place, but by the end of it I felt amazing. But again, it's hard to sustain something like that, and so that's why I kind of got it in my head to do it for that short period. But at that time, we were trying to get pregnant, and we'd been trying for nearly coming on 2 years. And so we'd been having some tests done with the doctors, and they, at the end of that month, we had this whole list the doctor said was wrong, and with me specifically, of why we would never actually be able to conceive naturally. So they thought. And whilst they were saying this, we were sat there and I was actually pregnant. I just hadn't realised it yet. And so after all those months, I kind of did think, was it this detox that somehow just shifted something in my body? You know, maybe just making sure I'd really cut out everything processed. Was that the reason I got pregnant? I had it also up to my supplements, my vitamins and things, maybe. You know, you can never definitely say. All I can say is that I did that and, you know, I did get to where I wanted to be. So, I mean, who knows? But yeah, I think in that way, that's kind of an extreme example where, I've changed something to do with my diet. And then I've had this amazing outcome that we've actually, you know, become pregnant, which is really exciting.
That's super exciting, isn't it? And I guess I was thinking as well, we had somebody else on the podcast that talked about infertility being on the rise.
Yeah.
And how some people suggest that there is a correlation between the plastics in our food.
Yeah.
And it's so difficult to avoid that because of the packaging in the supermarkets.
Yeah.
You know, it's so hard for us to, one, eat whole foods, and secondly, because of the packaging that we have to buy our food in.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on that? Do you think there's a correlation between infertility and the plastics in our food in particular, or?
I think there must be. I mean, I don't think it's probably proven yet, but, you know, probably 50 years down the line it will be, and everyone will be saying, oh, we can't believe you used to eat food that had been wrapped in plastic, but we're not lucky enough to be at that stage yet. But as well as the plastics, I think the hormones that are being put into our food as well. There's a certain brand of milk that's not produced in this country, and they've found the hormones that they're being giving the cows are then being passed on into the milk, and it's caused a real rise in male infertility. And it's like, how is that allowed?
Wow.
Like, why is that not more common knowledge? It is crazy. But going back to the microplastics, I think it's such a big, overwhelming subject. It's, you know, you have health, and then that's like a whole nother thing. And you kind of, when you start thinking about it, you might actually feel so overwhelmed that you feel like you shouldn't actually eat anything, because, you know, it's like, well, that's touched plastic and that's touched plastic. And I think in today's society, it's really hard to buy food that's not actually been put into plastic. I think one little thing I have done, which is just one thing I've changed, is we've bought some glass Tupperware, which I don't always use it because, you know, I cook a lot in my job and I often have a lot of leftovers. So sometimes I'm still using plastic, but that's one little change I've made. And then the other is that if you have hot food or drink in plastic, that can more easily get into your food. So I've stopped having like a takeaway coffee with a plastic lid, because obviously when you're drinking it, that can cause more plastics to go into you. So they're two little things I do. And then I guess in the supermarket, try and buy your produce that's not wrapped in the plastic. And, you know, when you're going down the aisle to buy your pasta or your lentils or whatever, you know, see if there's an option where it's actually in a paper box or, you know, some sort of paper packaging. You know, I think it is, the supermarkets are slowly realizing it and making steps in the right, well, maybe not the supermarkets, maybe the companies behind the products, but I think it's happening very slowly and we always have to take it into our own hands. But I think we also can't get too overwhelmed by it. Otherwise, you just don't even know where to start.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we're just trying to make small steps, aren't we? But so yeah, it can be overwhelming, and it's not made easy. Let's put it that way. No. with the people that are producing the food and packaging the food. I guess really. Yeah,
they feel like they've made it easier and convenient for us to go in and grab stuff. But actually, by doing that, it's damaging us in a different way. Well, more than one way, but by the plastics, as well as it being overly processed so that it can sit on a shelf for, you know, a year and still taste the same as the day they made it. So, I think it's that over-processed food again, isn't it? That's normally the stuff that's then wrapped in plastic. But at least with your fruit and veg, you do have the option to buy things loose if you want to, most of the time.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like I want to say something about your cute little truck. Is it a 1950s one?
I can never remember the year of it. It's Yeah, it's pretty old. It's
It's got to be 40s or 50s, hasn't
yeah, it's pretty old. It's just hanging on in there. I take it for its MOT every year and think, is it gonna? Well, normally it doesn't pass. This year it didn't pass because they couldn't open the front door. Which I went, it's fine. You just have to slide open the window and put your hand in. They were like, yeah, that's not a pass. So it wasn't a major thing, but yeah, they had to replace that.
Yeah. No, it's super cool what you do. I'm so pleased that you came and joined us today.
Thank you.
It's such an inspiring take on food, that how it nourishes us and brings us together and can be used in a completely different way, really. I think that we do think about food, or I used to, in a restrictive kind of a way, and that food is a bit of a nightmare, really, because we're always trying to eat healthily, and then we don't, and then we beat ourselves up, and so our relationship with food can be quite tricky.
Yeah.
So I've just really enjoyed our conversation today. I think it's super exciting what you do.
Yeah.
And you can find Holly going around the country with a little food truck. It's a 1940s or 50s, we're not sure.
Yeah,
it's a super cool truck. So where can people find you and find out more about, how they can access your food truck and the cooking demonstrations and all the other inspiring stuff that you do?
So my website is www.hollysgardenkitchen.com, and that's obviously got everything that I do on there, and my contact details on there. But also social media. Instagram's what I use the most. I sometimes post little recipe videos on there and pictures of down the garden and things, so people can see what I'm talking about when I'm talking about the kitchen garden, and and obviously what I'm doing is on there. So they're my main things. And I do have Facebook as well, so that's another one if people didn't have Instagram. But thank you for having me.
Absolutely. No, it's been really cool. And we encourage people to find a retreat or find a local group, because I think if we surround ourselves with people who are looking into nutrition as nourishing us and in this positive way, we're more likely to sustain it if we're around people that are doing the similar things.
Absolutely.
And try and rope our families in as well. That's the difficulty, isn't it, sometimes? But no, I've really enjoyed our conversation.
Me too.
So thank you.
Too. Thank you very much.
That's it for today's episode. If you've loved this conversation, be sure to subscribe, follow, and comments down below. If you've got any questions for our guests next week, we've got Joanna and Amanda from the Wellness Network. Joanna and Amanda, they do programs. They talk about all things wellness to do with physical, mental, emotional health. So if you're struggling with anything along those lines, be sure to ask any questions, and I'll endeavour to try and ask our guest any questions that you have. So it depends on how many we get as to whether I can feature the question, but I'll endeavour to include your question in next week's episode. That's it for now. I look forward to seeing you on the next episode.